The ceiling makes a sound like a knuckle cracking, except the knuckle is geological and the joint is your entire future. Dust sifts down first, fine and almost polite, like the mountain is clearing its throat before it says something it can't take back. You've got maybe 2 seconds, and you spend the first one looking up, which is the single worst use of a second in human history. The beam above you doesn't fall so much as arrive, all 400 tons of it, and the last clear thought you have is a strange, almost insulting realization that gravity was never on your side to begin with. It was just waiting. Yep, that's me. You're probably wondering how I ended up here. Oh, hey there, your host, formerly 5'11", now considerably more two-dimensional. I want to be upfront about something before we go any further. I'm not narrating this one from a textbook. I was under that beam. I know exactly what a tunnel sounds like in the half-second before it decides it's done being a tunnel. And I know what it's like to have your own rib cage renegotiate its terms with the rest of your body in real time. This isn't academic curiosity for me. This is a home video. Part 1. The mountain doesn't care about your plans. Here's the thing nobody tells you about rock. It's not stable, it's just patient. Every cave, every mine shaft, every parking garage built on questionable 1970s engineering is technically already collapsing, just on a timeline slower than a campaign promise. We like to think of collapse as an event. It's actually closer to a bill finally coming due. The structure above you has been doing math this whole time. Load, stress, fatigue, moisture, and one day the math stops working out for you, and gravity, which has been extremely patient this whole time, cashes in. I want to be clear that I'm not bitter about this. I'm dead, not unreasonable. Which brings us to the part where I actually explain what happens to a body when several 100 pounds of the math didn't work out lands on it. Because that's the part you came for, and I respect that about you. Morbid curiosity isn't a character flaw. It's a survival instinct wearing a disguise. You want to know what crushes me so you could avoid being crushed. Smart. Let's go. The physics second by second. 0.5 seconds in, and this is the part where your body still thinks it's going to be fine because your nervous system hasn't caught up to the bad news yet. Pain signals travel at a humbling pace, somewhere around 260 feet per second for the sharp stuff, slower for the dull ache, which means there's an actual gap, a real estate-sized gap between this is happening and I am aware this is happening. You exist for a fraction of a second in the last calm room in a burning house. 3 seconds in, and the weight finds your rib cage, and your rib cage does the thing rib cages were never ever designed to do, which is lose an argument. Human ribs can typically take somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,000 to 3,000 newtons of force before they fracture. For reference, that's roughly the force of a mid-sized sedan deciding it doesn't like you personally. A cave-in delivers that introduction without a horn honk first. 10 seconds in, and here's where it gets genuinely unfair. Your diaphragm, the muscle doing all the unglamorous work of keeping you breathing, is now pinned and it cannot expand. This is called traumatic asphyxia, and I want you to sit with how cruel that phrasing is. You're not suffocating because there's no air. The air is right there. You're suffocating because your own chest has been told it's no longer allowed to move. Imagine being handcuffed to your own lungs. You thought drowning was the scary one. Spoiler, you were wrong. Drowning at least has the decency to let your chest keep trying. Minute 1 and your blood pressure is doing something deeply weird because crush injuries trap blood in the damaged tissue like a hostage situation nobody negotiated. The pressure of the rubble is literally squeezing your circulatory system shut in some places and bursting it open in others. It's less injury and more civil war inside your own bloodstream. Minute 3 and your muscles, the ones bearing the brunt of the weight, start dying in a process so specifically horrifying it has its own name, rhabdomyolysis. Muscle cells rupture and dump their contents, potassium, myoglobin, the whole interior decorating scheme of a cell, directly into your bloodstream. Your body, in trying to survive the crush, is quietly poisoning itself with its own demolished furniture. Fast fact 1. The crushing force of an average cave-in collapse can exceed 40 tons per square meter. That's roughly the weight of 7 adult elephants standing on a yoga mat where the yoga mat is you. Minute 10, and if, and this is a genuinely massive if, the pressure is ever lifted before this point, your survival odds actually plummet, not rise, because all that toxic muscle byproduct floods your system at once. It's called crush syndrome, and it has killed people minutes after rescue, smiling, blinking, certain they'd made it. The mountain doesn't even need the last laugh. It can let the rescue team accidentally deliver it. I told you this one had a twist ending. Several, actually. I'm an overachiever, even in death. Myth 1. If you're trapped but conscious, you should try to move the debris yourself to free your chest. True or false? False, and catastrophically false. Shifting debris can collapse what's left of your air pocket, and worse, sudden release of pressure on a crushed limb can trigger that toxic flood I just mentioned faster than rescue teams can treat it. The textbook advice is almost insultingly simple. Stay still, breathe shallow, wait. I know, thrilling. Myth 2. Being buried means there's no air left to breathe. True or false? Also false, and this one matters because it's the myth that kills hope fastest. Rubble is porous. Air pockets exist, sometimes for days, which is exactly why trapped survival stories stretch past the point logic suggests they should. The real threat usually isn't oxygen running out. It's the weight, the crush, the cold, and eventually dehydration. The mountain has more than one way to finish the job, and it's not picky about which one it uses.
Myth 3. Cave-ins are mostly a historical problem. Modern mines and tunnels don't really collapse anymore. True or false? False. And I say that with the smug authority of someone who didn't live through the rebuttal. Modern engineering has made collapses rarer, sure, but ground subsidence, unmapped voids, flooding, and structural fatigue still bring down tunnels, mines, and even parking structures with depressing regularity. Confidence in concrete is just a more expensive version of confidence in rock. Here's where it gets interesting, though, because facts and physics only tell you what happens to the meat. They don't tell you what it's like to be the person still operating the meat. So, let's talk about that. Scenario drop. You're 40 feet in. Headlamp catching dust that wasn't there a minute ago. You hear it before you feel it, a low groan, like the mountain clearing its throat, and your body freezes in the specific way bodies freeze when every animal instinct screams, "This is the part of the nature documentary where something doesn't make it." You don't get a montage, you don't get a slow-motion hero shot, you get half a second of pure, unfiltered, "oh," and then the world becomes very, very heavy, very, very fast. What does this actually feel like? This is the part where I stop being your tour guide and start being honest, so bear with me because the jokes are about to take a back seat. Not leave entirely, I have a brand to maintain, but they're going to sit quietly in the corner for a minute. The first thing you feel isn't pain, it's pressure, and pressure has a way of making time do something strange. It stretches, then it doesn't, then it stretches again, like your brain is trying every setting on a remote control, hoping one of them makes this stop. You become extremely aware of your own heartbeat, which is rude because it's now the loudest thing in a world that has otherwise gone almost completely silent. Dust has a smell. You'll remember that smell with a clarity that nothing else in your life earned. There's panic, but it's not the movie kind. No screaming, no thrashing, because thrashing requires room you no longer have. It's a quieter panic, an internal one, the kind that just sits in your chest next to the pain and refuses to leave. Confusion sets in not long after. A fog that has less to do with fear and more to do with your brain simply not getting enough oxygenated blood to keep running its usual programs. Thoughts arrive unfinished. Names of people you love show up uninvited and then dissolve before you can hold on to them. Time distortion is real, and it's not poetic, it's mechanical. Your sense of time lives partly in regions of the brain that are some of the first to be affected by falling oxygen and rising carbon dioxide. So, minutes feel like hours, or hours collapse into something that feels like seconds, and you genuinely cannot tell which. Some people report a strange calm near the end, not because death is peaceful, but because the brain, starved enough, simply stops fighting and starts conserving. It's not surrender, it's a light switch running out of electricity to flip. And then, and I promise this is the only part of the whole script I'm not going to make a joke about, there's a fade. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just a quiet narrowing, like someone slowly turning down every channel in the building at once, until there's nothing left tuned in. Okay, back to me being insufferable, because that silence got heavy fast and I refused to let it sit there too long. Speaking of heavy, let's talk numbers, because nothing unhaunts a moment like a well-placed statistic. Fast fact 2. The 2010 Copiapo mine collapse in Chile trapped 33 miners under roughly 700,000 metric tons of rock. That's about the weight of 2,000 fully loaded jumbo jets stacked on top of a hole the size of a basketball court. They survived 69 days. every single one of them. I bring this up because it's proof the mountain doesn't always win, even when it really genuinely should. Fast fact 3. The 2010 Haiti earthquake caused widespread structural collapse that entimated 250,000 people under rubble, roughly the entire population of a mid-sized American city, buried under what used to be their own homes in the same afternoon. Fast fact 4. The International Labor Organization has long flagged mining as one of the most fatally dangerous occupations on the planet, with collapse and crush incidents consistently among the leading causes of death underground, meaning the danger isn't a relic of the past, it's a line item in a current job description. Here's a comparison that should make this land harder than the numbers alone. The average loaded shipping container weighs 30 tons. A serious cave-in can drop the equivalent of more than one of those containers onto a space the size of a phone booth, except the phone booth used to have a person standing in it, checking their messages, completely unaware they were standing in a crime scene that hadn't happened yet. And confined space and structural collapse incidents aren't some freak outlier risk reserved for miners and tunnel workers either. Construction site collapses, trench cave-ins, and even basement and parking structure failures injure and kill people every year in supposedly ordinary jobs, the kind where nobody clocks in expecting to become a statistic, let alone a haunted narrator. Fast fact 5. Even a relatively shallow trench cave-in can deliver enough weight to be instantly fatal, because soil is heavier than people assume. A single cubic yard of it can weigh well over a ton, which means a trench collapse barely taller than your waist can still outweigh a small car landing directly on your chest. I know, I had the same reaction, and I had it from the inside. Which brings us finally to the part of the program where I stop being a cautionary tale and start being useful. Because dying for content only counts as a public service if you actually walk away knowing something.
How to not end up like me. 1. If you're in a mine, tunnel, trench, or any confined excavation, know your exit routes before you need them. Not as a vague idea, but as a rehearsed muscle memory path, because panic deletes improvisation first. 2. Respect shoring and support structures even when they look probably fine. The mountain does not negotiate with your schedule, and probably fine is the exact phrase printed on the headstones of people who used to be in a hurry. 3. If a structure groans, creaks, or drops dust without an obvious source, leave immediately. That sound is not the building warming up, it's the building's resignation letter, and you do not want to be the last person who heard it and stayed for the going away party. 4. If you're ever trapped, resist the urge to dig yourself out or shift debris off your own chest. Counterintuitive, I know, but stillness genuinely buys you more time than struggle does. And rescue teams are trained to manage the dangerous part of getting you out, which is the part where the pressure finally comes off. 5. Support trench safety regulations and proper shoring requirements whenever you have the chance to. Vote for them, fund them, demand them on job sites, because most of these deaths aren't unavoidable acts of God. They're avoidable acts of we didn't want to pay for the shoring. Look, I can't take any of this advice myself anymore, obviously. I'm speaking to you from a state of permanent retirement, but that's exactly why you should listen to me and not become my coworker in the afterlife. I had places to be. I had a dog. I had a truly embarrassing number of unfinished shows queued up. The mountain didn't care about any of it, and it won't care about your list either, so take the warning seriously, even though it's coming from someone who clearly didn't. If you want more videos like this, subscribe.